Yes, that was a very important part of the restoration, the research. Of course, before being able to reconstruct details which were missing or changed, I needed to investigate how Zumpe Buntebart in this period in the 70s did details. And these instruments you mentioned, the two Zumpe Buntebart in Amsterdam and Halle from 1773, and the four instruments in Rome from 1772, 1773, 1775 and 1776, so just a perfect time range to restore this instrument. I found all the necessary material, the original profiles around the soundboard which I needed. In Amsterdam I found the original material of the damper, how the damper springs, yeah, and so I could, thanks to this instruments, I could reconstruct all the details for the Barcelona Zumpe. I try to use the original materials, the original type of wood, and in most cases I was able to use it. I decided, for instance, for the dampers, I decided there were 10 dampers not original, but they were not from the restoration of the 1940s or 50s, but they were from this first modification, which I thought it was quite a good quality work, and so I decided to reuse this and leave this the dampers. One specific material we can't find today anymore, and this is whalebone. So we find whalebone in the action here, in how the dampers are guided. This piece here is originally whalebone, which are the sticks which connect the damper with the key underneath. I used strips of ebony, which worked fine. You have to make in here, because this is like a hinge, so you make a hole in here, and there's a little pin. So I had to reconstruct all this, and which works in ebony fine. Another piece of whalebone is originally used here for the springs to keep the dampers down, but actually I was able to investigate some original parts left in the Zumpe Buntebart in Amsterdam, and I saw that it's very light. It's only a tiny bit of tension. Shouldn't be too much, because otherwise the touch gets too heavy. So I was puzzled what to use, because whalebone, of course, it's also an ethical choice not to use anymore this material. So we have, of course, lots of choices for modern material which could substitute, and I used carbon fiber. I found the right diameter, 1.5 millimeter, round. I cut it in little pieces, and then the ends, which are here connecting, which are laying on the damper, is actually I filed down, and it's flat, and you can see it's a little bit like a spring, and it's, of course, one by one with a file. It was quite a long process, but it works fine, and I could get it just the right lightness I needed with a bit of pressure. So I was very happy to find this material, which even looks like almost like the original. Yeah. No, I think they're completely two different worlds. I mean, the Christofori action is a perfect working escapement mechanism, which has many parts of wood involved, and it's in itself just an incredibly well-working action. And the Zumpe, and before I restored it, I was looking at it a little bit as a less unsophisticated action, but I have to say, after the restoration and after I have much better understood how it works, I have a big respect for Zumpe, and I think this is has in itself works very well, and it is for the maintenance, of course, much simpler. Once set up, this action does almost need no attention, which of course, if you sell it to a wide public, then it's just it was a commercial background, making it as simple as possible. And I have to say that it works well even without an escapement. The escapement is incorporated inside the simplicity, and it works fine. And it's just a very important part of the history of the piano action. It's a bit encouragement and stimulation to restore an instrument to playable condition, especially if you think that people in nowadays are used to listen to perfectly recorded CDs, and if you think of the modern piano, which is made in a fabric and it works perfectly without noise, so to bring an instrument, an historic instrument, restore it to the standard of today, so that can be a pleasure to listen in a concert, it's a big it's a big stimulation for a restorer. And in this case, of course, it also had some. I had to, for the regulation, it meant that it had to be very well regulated for all the parameters which are important. For instance, the depth of the key, the height of the hammer travel, the distance between the hammer head and the strings, and also the way the cloth underneath the keyboard is balanced. Here you can see that I had to choose cloth different, the height of the cloth different for the naturals and the chromatic notes. Not having the original keyboard, one had to find the best way to balance the chromatic notes and the natural notes, and this was a.
The original is always.
No, in the original is always one big piece, but it has been changed, and in this case, because the keys are slightly longer, so I found that this is a very good way in getting the touch even and light for the naturals and the chromatic notes.